Hi everyone, it's Benetta here from Your Anxious Teen, and today we're talking about perception. So why is perception such a big thing? Why is it important? And why is it important for us to know when we're dealing with our teens with anxiety? You know, before I started to become a hypnotherapist, I wondered a lot about why certain things were, particularly like, when I was a nurse, why do people have more pain than others? Why do people recover quicker than others? Why is it that, those things happen without any sort of grounding? Because it could be that someone's told that they have, a prognosis that's really poor, and one person will just dissolve into a heap. And if they're told they've got 6 months to live, they'll actually live a lot less than even 6 months. Whereas some other people, when you're told that, they'll think, no, I'm going to choose how to deal with this. And they got a lot better results because they might have said, you know what do doctors know? It's only a perception, right? When we evaluate something with our logical mind, we can come to some sort of, logical conclusion about something. But when we're not calm, when we're overwhelmed, when we're in this anxious state ourselves, then we can't come to a logical decision or conclusion, because what happens is that our subconscious mind just takes over. And when it takes over, it goes into that survival mode, that fight, flight, or freeze, because that's how we, as I suppose much more less evolved people, would have dealt with a situation. And that's much the same as now, is that we will run away, and run away means that we'll find something else that fills that need that we have inside. So perception. When our child is having problems and they become a bit anxious, it's quite often how we deal with it and what we perceive their problems to be. I know myself that thing of trying to find a reason, right? Find a reason. And we will go from our own perception of what that reason might be. That reason might not be anything to do with what we think as adults, as grown adults. We have to realize that our teens are still growing, that their brain is still in the growing phase, and that some of the things that really, really hurt them deep inside are not things that would matter to us too much, because we've gone through so many things to get where we are. So let's think about perception with our children. And I'd like to, say hi to everybody and say thanks for dropping by. So Adair, you're here again. I'm so pleased that you're dropping in. And I hope that these things that I'm saying just help you in some small way. So let's have a think about what sort of things might be going on in our children's or teens' mind. One of the things is the disruption of COVID, right? Because even for ourselves, that has been quite a learning curve for us, that we can't just hop in a car and go wherever we want. We can't just go on holidays. We can't plan anything far in advance because we don't know what's ahead of us. For our teens, that's a really big thing, right? They can't even plan, say, an event like their deb or graduation, or, I know when my children finished school, they went on a holiday. One went to Europe and started traveling, and that just can't happen just now. So they're sort of stuck in this feeling of uncertainty. And when we look at our needs, we need to have some certainty. some certainty in our life where we feel, I suppose, in control, and we feel as if we've got some say. So obviously that has done very little for people, particularly our teens, on where they stand in planning any of their, I suppose, their life, let alone the next year or so. Feelings of inadequacy. When we think about how much time our teens usually spend watching TV, it's supposed to be real people, but the real housewives of Beverly Hills or wherever it is, and they aspire to be, I suppose, affluent. And our kids are actually seeing two sides of the stone, aren't they? So one is where you have everything, and the other is where you have nothing. So when we look at the TV programs, one is about people who absolutely have nothing in life, and the other one about who has everything. The only way that a normal teenager can, I suppose, allow themselves to think that they're going to have everything is to be an influencer. So if you're an influencer, you maybe get paid to just say what you're doing, or look at clothing, or do makeup, and it makes them feel good. But there's the other side of the coin also, of them comparing themselves. So when they compare themselves to these people, they feel as if they have nothing or nothing to offer. So I'm just having a look at a comment here, and okay, so if you have any comments, if you're watching the program, please put some comments so that I can help you if possible. Okay, so that you can, I suppose, see things from a different angle. So let's have a look. If we look at perception for our teens, relationship problems, if you're anything like me, you've probably been through a few heartbreaks, right, in your time. But our children seem to think that this, whatever they're going through right now, if there's a breakup, that it's the end of the world. And in their mind, it is. So we can't put that down. We can't allow ourselves to go, oh, well, you only went out for a month, or, oh, well, it was only a crush on someone. Because for them, it's real. The devastation is real. So just to allow them to know that they can come to you for support and for comfort, and to be able to say it's going to be okay. One day it'll be okay. What about something else? Let's have a look. At the moment, gender and sexuality is a big thing. When I think back to my own growing up, there was very little talk about what gender you were and how you were to be addressed. If you were unmarried, you were Miss, and if you were married, you were Mrs. If you were a lesbian, that means you like girls. If you were gay, another guy, you liked guys. There was no further, I suppose, segregation of these gender identities. These days, there is so much. And I do have some of my young clients who are here because they feel as if they aren't themselves, right? They aren't the person that they were born as. And it's very difficult to have that conversation sometimes. Hi, Amanda. Yeah, the teens who can't get to school because of anxiety. So where is that anxiety coming from? Is it because they have been disrupted? when we have a routine and every day we get up at the same time and we go to work or we go to school, then that becomes a routine. And when that's broken, that feels strange. And so it's just having to get back to some sort of normality. And if you're in Melbourne, Amanda, like I am, it's really difficult because we're at school, then we're not at school, then we're homeschooled, and then it's just too much for them. So it's just to say, we in this lifetime have to be adaptable. We have to be resilient, because we never know what the future holds, and we never have, but this has just brought it all up into our face, right? We have to deal with it. So to just say to them, well, how was school before this? Were you anxious to go to school then? And if they say no, you say, well, there's nothing different here. It's just that we have to learn, all of us, not just you, to be a bit flexible and resilient to change, because we never know what's going to happen at the moment. So coax them into going to school. It's okay to go to school. If it was a problem before COVID, going to school, then this has just accented it. It's accentuated how it feels. So really, it's about finding out if there's an underlying cause. We might talk a little bit more about that if you like, Amanda. You can just send me a message and we can talk about that. So everything at the moment is heightened, is what I'm trying to say. It's become more than it was before. There's also a thing about uncertainty, about being sucked into drama. If you've got a teen girl, there'll often be a lot more drama at school. Teen girls seem to love drama. Now, whether that's because they see it on TV or see it in TikTok or on their phones, whatever it is, it may be that seems the only way to be. In fact, I know that one of my friends had two sisters, and they would always find some drama or other. One would be left out and one would be, the favorite at that time. And they would just go through a cycle of leaving one person out. Remember as well that if there's drama in the house, if there's drama between their siblings, then they will often be the ones to take that to school, because they're used to it. They think that whatever they do inside of the house is okay outside of the house. And this is how this friend was too. She used to bring drama into her life in many, many ways with friendships. But for her, you see, it was a normal occurrence, because she just thought that that's the way that people were, and that just because her sisters would get over the drama really easily, that so would her friends. That wasn't the case, of course, and she got herself into a bit of bother with all that sort of stuff. But whatever's normal in the house often is normal at school. When you meet, because I always used to meet my children's friends' parents, right? Because that would show me what type of background they had and whether it was likely that they were going to get into a lot of strife or drama. So always be a little bit cautious about who they're hanging with, and maybe if they're with the wrong people or how you feel the wrong people, then maybe it's time to push them into a different hobby or something so that they can have different friends outside of school, or just know that it's going to happen and to steer them in that direction of being away from the drama a little bit. And also when they get home, if they can come home to a calm atmosphere, then that will help that their adrenal glands to actually calm down, because we don't want to be living on adrenaline. Otherwise, what happens to our anxious teens is they become more anxious because they're used to the adrenaline rush. Anyway, let's talk a bit more about perception. So, losing friends and not fitting in. Our teens will often have the perception that they're never going to find new friends. That if they lose this friendship circle, that they're never going to find anyone else to be friends with. It can be more difficult, of course, because if you're in one of those schools where it's like little groups of girls, they will find it more difficult. However, finding what I call their own tribe is really important. The people who like what you like, and they will always be the people who stick around. So if you are a particularly, I suppose, techie sort of person, then you'll sit with those people who like maybe maths and maybe computer studies, anything to do with that techie side. So just help them to realize by telling stories yourself, right? Like when I started a new school, I thought that I would never find new friends. However, one of those friends is still a friend of mine today. So just help them by telling your own stories, because our own stories are really, I suppose, influential on our kids. We don't realize it because they might say, oh, what do you know? Or, oh, you've never done this. But it's not true, is it? Most of the time, we've been through a similar situation. So if we can just guide them, if we try and push hard, they'll often push back at us, and then we'll be lost. So communication is a really imperative thing for us to have. Communication between ourselves and our teens, and understanding as much as we can their problems. One more thing I'd like to say is about perfection. Now, this is quite often something that they perceive that we want. You know, if we just say, you know, do your best and you can do nothing more, then we expect their best though. And their best isn't always our best, right? Their best might be, oh, I come home and I do half an hour's work, or I do my homework in a hurry and I still get it done. To them, that might be their best. And it might be their best for right now. If they're going through things, you know, like homeschooling or feeling anxious about going to school, then of course that will be something that will influence how much work they do or how well they do it. If, of course, they're homeschooling and you have 2 or 3 other children in the house who are not keeping up with their work, then of course that influences how they deal with things and whether they can do their best. We also are just doing our best, right? As parents of anxious teens, we are trying to find solutions for them. I can tell you that the more we look and the more we put that focus on their anxiety, the more the anxiety will grow. So for me, when my son was having anxiety, I was looking for answers all over the place. I'm a bit of a Mrs. Fix-It, so therefore I was looking for what would help him. The more I looked and the more I tried to put things in his, in his eyes to see or to listen to, the more anxious he became. So once I realized that by just being calm and giving him a task or two sometimes, what can you do for you today? How can you get to school feeling less anxious? So by being calm, by talking through things when he was calm, we found better solutions. rather than me searching and going onto the internet and Googling everything. However, that is the way that I found a lot of, I suppose, the things I teach now, is because I teach them to parents, and I also teach some of that to children, right, to teens, because it gave me a lot of information. It gave me a lot of tools. But the biggest tool that I had was doing my studies for hypnotherapy, finding a lot of information out about their subconscious brain and about how it's working and how it's not working. So when we think about perfectionism and how we might influence our children to be doing our best, sometimes they think that we want not only their best, but we want perfection. So if we can take that out of the equation and help them to perceive that what we really want is not even for them to do their best, but for them to have some sort of life, for them to have some sort of education. So if we say, education equals being able to earn money, education equals us to know things, to be able to work through solutions. And you'll find that when they go to school, it'll be the things that interest them that they're good at, right? And to recognize that all the other things we might just get through. My daughter was never good at maths, and she still isn't particularly good at maths, but she has taught herself how to be able to add up, how to use a calculator, how to do the things she needs to do. So it may be that your teen is being pushed a little hard. So we have to think about how that is perceived by them from the things we say. They also need a little, I suppose, boost as well. If things aren't going well for them, and even if they shower today or they get to school, even if they do half a day at school, even if they get through it without feeling anxious on that particular day, to actually celebrate the small things. You see, it's very confronting for teens. Yeah, it's very confronting for teens to have parents who don't always see their problems. So it's definitely about perception. And also thinking today about someone who's going through some difficulties is that sometimes we put on a brave face. We put on a brave face so that we think that our teens don't notice what's going on with us really. However, what it does is it changes the energy. It changes the energy around us. And our children will always pick up on that. They've been around since they were born, right? So they will always pick up on there's something not quite right. And if we don't tell them what isn't right in our world, then they will make it up for themselves. They will perceive it from their own problems, okay? I remember one thing that I'll leave you with today, and that was that my husband and I always have a little, I suppose, banter between each other. It tends to sort of keep us on our toes. We don't argue, but we do have a bit of a banter, right? And our children used to think that we were arguing and that we were going to split up and that we were going to be divorced and that it was going to be terrible, because then they'd have to decide who they were going to live with. And I'm just having a look at Adair's question here. My daughter's leaving. That's right. We were talking about something about children picking up, right? And children of a young age will always make up in their own mind what is going on, and then they will build it up, because they may have heard something at school. Say if one of their friends says, oh, my mum and dad split up, they got divorced. And then they will say, because they were always arguing. So they don't know the difference between an argument that's really a big problem and that may cause these people to divorce, or just what was going on in our household, whereby we would have a bit of banter and there would be this thing of, well, if you don't like it, you can leave. We have been married now for 30-something years, right? And that banter is still sometimes goes on. But now the children are grown, they can see the difference between what usually goes on and that we'll probably never get divorced, and what would be going on in a household where there would be a lot of physical and mental abuse going on. And when that's going on around them, they feel so insecure, and that insecurity will probably follow them if they don't do some sort of therapy on what happened there, and that it was not their fault. It was nothing to do with them. Because if we don't tell them what's going on, if we don't allow them to know the truth, then what will happen is they will perceive whatever they want. They will perceive whatever's going on in their own world, and they will make it about them. So I hope this helped a little for you to think more about perception. If you would like the notes from today, which there obviously is plenty more, information in those notes, please just put notes in the comments. If you would like my download to listen to about calmness, about bringing calm into your life, so that you can, I suppose, really allow your body to shift and to be calm. Because when we're in a situation where there's anxiety around us, we start to feel start to feel that within our body. And so let's just breathe and be calm. If you'd like the calm download, please just put calm in the comments. It's lovely to have you here today. And please, if there's anything that you'd like to say, get back to me, leave me a comment, and I'll get back to you and try and help. Okay, that's all for today. Bye for now.